we're not growing row crops and things, you know what I mean? So there is that kind of like, can you stick it anywhere? Like, can you have the crocuses next to the blueberry bushes and stick a pepper over there?
This is Serious Grower Podcast. I'm Anna. I'm an entomologist. I'm a scientist, and I am using this podcast to talk to all kinds of growers and ears who are serious about their farms, their gardens, their local food systems, and I'm asking, how can science help? Today's co-host is Jason. He is a regular dude in Oregon's Hood River Valley, and he wants to turn his lawn into an edible landscape and an amazing place for his family. Jason and his wife, Mindy, are lifelong friends of mine. I would call both of them a Jack or a Jill of all trades, and they make a great team, raising a couple of elementary age kids, and they always have a few household projects cooking. I have been thinking about the possibility of garden coaching sessions for members of NHCSR, and I thought these two would make great guinea pigs for figuring out what that might look like, what that might sound like. So we're going to drop in with them throughout the year and hear how things are progressing. Tell me about what you all are thinking. Like, I know your goals are small right now, but like, what's the game plan?
Yeah, I mean, for our projects going on, I mean, the front yard, I guess, is probably the biggest one because we cleared that out, took the sod out, and then put soil in, did some edging. So it's basically just bare dirt ready to be planted in the spring. We get some herbs, with some rosemary and some lavender and stuff that we got on sale at the end of the year. That stuff does well year round here. We put those things in, but yeah.
I'm curious, the space that you dug up, like how big is it?
Well, we put a path in between it too. So there's like a walkway, but the whole area is probably like, it's a triangle. It's maybe 30 or 40 on one side and 20 by 15 kind of area.
Yeah.
It's just a small front yard along the driveway.
I mean, do you have a plan for it, or are you just going to fill it in as you go?
Some of it's already planted. Like the very front has a rhododendron in it that we want to leave because it looks nice year round, keeps its leaves. It looks good when it blooms. There's some bulbs that Mindy planted, different flowers that come up. And then there's like an evergreen, I don't even know what it is, some sort of spruce or fir type ornamental that, you know, those ones that grow up and then drape down to the ground. You know, it's like one of those. We put in there's some hostas in another corner near a pole, and then jasmine plant. And then that's all that we left, really. And then the rest of it, we put in already 2 cherry trees several years ago. So we tore the sod up around those. Those are now matured and producing cherries.
Yeah.
We put in 3 blueberry bushes last year and got blueberries off of them in the summer.
Oh, is that because your mother's an expert blueberry grower now?
No, I don't think so. But here's a funny story. One of the blueberry packs we got had some sort of willow in it. Was the type of pussy willow. I don't remember. There's different varieties of them. All right. And the leaves look pretty similar to a blueberry, especially when they're a small tree. Well, the willow is really fast growing. Never seen a blueberry bush grow that fast, but I sure thought it was one until it got to about 6 foot tall or something in one season. I was like, this is not how blueberries grow. And realized that, it was not a blueberry bush.
It was a real ugly duckling situation.
Yeah, but it grew. It must have just been, a volunteer that was in that pot, and it grew up like basically underneath the blueberry bush. So,
do you know why I laughed at my great uncle Charlie? Like him and his wife were big gardeners. He was a vegetable gardener. He had a vegetable garden out back, and she liked the ornamental side of things. And like neither the twain should meet, right? So if anybody ever came over to the house and asked him about any of the plants, he would just say it was a pussy willow, like no matter what it was. And like it was kind of like one of these like people learned really quickly not to ask it. Like just like every once in a while, like I like pick up on you still have like a lingering New Hampshire accent, and that's what made me laugh. Is like, oh, that's a pussy willow.
That was pretty funny because I couldn't believe how it was growing. Then I started to slowly realize, well, the other one that was the same isn't growing as fast, but it was only a piece of the plant. Anyway, it was just really funny. I mean, the thing matured to almost 2 inches diameter by the end of the season. It was, before that I had realized this is not a blueberry, but what is it? What happened? Googled it and found out and cut it down.
What kind of blueberries are you growing?
Geez, I don't know what the variety is. The cultivated high bush, large blueberries, not the wild type of blueberry.
Tell me you're from New England without telling me you're from New England, right? Like most people don't even think about there being a different kind of blueberry.
Right.
My parents were like, oh, the tall bush, the big ones. And I was like, you don't understand. Like when you think about tall bush in Virginia, they're talking about like rabbit eye, which is like this completely other weird style of blueberry. I ask because I think the biggest variation in blueberry would be like maturation time. So like the early maturing varieties versus the late maturing varieties. A lot of the times, if you have a couple of different blueberry varieties, you're kind of trying to span a long period of time. So you have some that mature later, depending on how many bushes you have. I'm sure you guys don't have enough bushes to worry about your labor. Like you could have all the same variety, right?
Yeah. We only have 3 bushes now.
Where you are, you do have spotted wing Drosophila, so the earlier the better.
Okay.
That's a fly that we really don't know exactly how it overwinters. That was actually my job when I was a postdoc at Cornell, was to try to figure that out, and I failed. But everybody else did too. But what we do know is that the population starts out very, very low at the beginning of the year, so low that it's almost impossible to detect. And then it grows exponentially through the year. In New Hampshire, we really don't see it until like July or August. I think in Oregon, where you are, you're going to see it a little bit earlier than that, but it's going to be so low that it won't bother you unless, of course, you have a variety that doesn't ripen until like late August. Then you might start having a problem with like fruit dripping off your plants. If you have a variety that ripens in July, just make sure to refrigerate everything just in case there's like 1 or 2 eggs that makes its way into your fruit and then hatches and you have larvae in your fruit. It's not bad for you. I would just put them in the fridge. A couple days in the fridge will kill any kind of egg or larvae.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and blueberries can take the cold.
Anybody about that?
Yeah, don't tell anybody. But like, don't pick blueberries and just let them sit on your counter. Granted, in your household, how long are blueberries going to hang around after you've picked them?
More often than not, they get picked and put right in the mouth. So
That's the way to do it, baby. That's the way to do it.
we have some currant on the side of the house, and there was something that we egged up that turned into larvae, and kids bit into it and looked at what they had eaten, and nobody will touch this anymore. So I pretty much chopped the currant down. I let the raspberries take over.
Well, raspberries are even worse.
Probably, but they didn't see it in the raspberry.
Right.
And they eat those, hand them out.
What time of year was it when the currants were ripe? Do you remember?
They ripen a little earlier, beginning of July or end of June.
Okay. I wonder if it was spotted wing Drosophila or if it was something else, because there's certainly other things that can get into fruit, like sap beetles. That would probably be the most horrific thing to bite into.
Little white larvae.
It might have been.
Kind of big for larvae, I guess. But, they're small berries, so they weren't huge.
It might have been a sabidi, honestly, because they're everywhere. They lay their eggs in everything that has fruit on it. That's pretty good if it flowered and fruited in its first full year. Like, that means it's in a good spot.
The blueberries, yeah, they didn't produce a ton of berries, but they did flower and we got some fruit off of them. So I think next year they'll actually produce.
Yeah. Do you have all the information you need about pruning and blueberry bush care?
No, not really, actually. Yeah, I was doing that ad hoc because I looked it up and they obviously like acidic soil. Bought something to test the soil, and then I bought an additive to make the soil more acidic. Put them on small mounds. But that's about all I know. Okay. We dump our coffee grinds on them every now and then too.
Pretty good plan, actually. Knowing how much coffee you drink. Jason and I were having this conversation during the winter, and this would be a good time to think about pruning his cherry trees. So wintertime is the best time to prune because you're less likely to introduce disease inoculum or cause other kind of heat-related stress to your trees. Pruning young trees is important to making sure you start off with solid architecture, and regular pruning is important to encourage optimal flowering and fruiting. I'm sharing a really nice resource from Jason's Extension Service in Oregon, which I'm also including in the show notes. This advice from Oregon State University should be a good resource for most of you out there, but I guarantee your local extension office has a similar resource and may even offer workshops on pruning, so worth checking out your local extension office. Jason's blueberry bushes may not need pruning yet. In the future, he may want to cut back old wood as those plants get older, but this is also a good time to think about fertilization and to be ready for a plan of attack in the springtime. The best time to fertilize blueberries is in the spring, right after bud break when they start pushing new leaves out. Even better if you split that application and fertilize again when the plants start producing fruit or after harvest. Make sure not to over fertilize young plants. They're very sensitive to it. And make sure not to fertilize after August or so, because if you fertilize too late in the year, it can signal the plant to grow during a time that it should be getting ready to overwinter. So what to use? For a home gardener, you can absolutely go out and buy that bag that says 4 blueberries on it and follow the instructions on the back. It's typically a granular that you sprinkle around your plants. Maybe you scratch it into the top layer of soil a little bit, and subsequent rain or irrigation moves that fertilizer into the root zone. Now, you might read things on the internet that make you question whether or not this is a good idea, because you're technically paying a lot compared to what a commercial farmer might be spending on a per acre basis when you go out and buy the bag that says 4 blueberries on it. But I wouldn't overthink this. You're not growing acres and you're probably not trying to turn a profit. Furthermore, you can totally use regular 10-10-10 Miracle-Gro style fertilizers, or even just Osmocote, those little slow release balls that release a little bit of fertilizer every time they get wet. Why not? The goal is not to overdo it. I'm not a soil scientist or a crop physiologist, so this is not my area of expertise, and I'm going to speak in generalities that might make an expert wince. But the best thing to keep in mind whenever we're talking about soil pH for any crop is that influences the availability of other nutrients. So in the case of blueberry plants, we know that low pH or acid soils keep the nitrogen in the soil in a version of nitrogen that blueberry plants like best. We did hear Jason talking about knowing that blueberry plants like acid soils. It has to do with nitrogen, one of the most important macronutrients for plants writ large. Urea is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of nitrogen. So that's the nitrogen source we find most in fertilizer products. In ideal circumstances, we would be applying the more expensive ammonium-based nitrogen fertilizers for blueberry. That's what they like best. And soil pH that is nice and low, which is nice and acid, keeps that nitrogen, the ammonium-based nitrogen, from nitrifying into the version that is not preferred by blueberries. And this is the case for other acid-loving plants. All of these versions of nitrogen are just fine. One is just a little bit better, and the plants will thrive a little bit more. So we were laughing a little bit about the coffee grounds, and you might have heard the coffee grounds or pine needles around plants can help acidify your soil. Nothing wrong with that. Plants always benefit from more organic matter in their soil, and that stuff will work into the soil column. But it won't change the pH of your soil, or at least not overnight. Sorry, that's just an old wives' tale. Commercial operations typically use a wood mulch, like a bark mulch or sawdust. This is mostly for weed management, for managing soil moisture, and in some areas, these regular mulch applications are timed as an IPM practice for a disease called mummyberry. Over time, this practice does lower soil pH. Adding urea fertilizers will also decrease soil pH by about 0.1 units per year, but this is a slow process. So you can kind of see why soil testing is important. Most state extension services extend soil testing to home gardeners as well as commercial farmers. And you can reach out to your local office to find out more about how to use their services and how to amend your soil to get it where it needs to be. It sounds like these blueberries are doing very well where they are in Jason's yard. So far, so good. Back to our conversation. How much time is that spot covered in shade during the day?
The front of the house gets sun early morning and into the afternoon, so it doesn't get evening sun. In the summer, it's probably sunny out there until 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
It's partial shade. So are you thinking about most of your stuff being like perennial trees, like fruit trees and stuff like that?
Probably, although the peppers did pretty well.
They did.
There is part of it, I think, that gets evening. The house shades it in the evening, so there is part of it that then gets later sun too. I don't know. I'd have to really pay attention to it more to kind of track that.
I guess it's also what is your expectation for success? If you were happy with how many peppers were produced.
Well, I wouldn't be able to really judge that because the peppers we put in there were after we tore it up in the summer. So we got those and sale towards the end of the season and just threw them in there. And they kind of flowered out of shock, and we got a bunch of peppers and ate a few of them.
I mean, that's success. That's why you're growing the plants.
Yeah, and I picked that spot because I know that area gets more of the evening sun. There is parts of it that probably get more sun than I realize, I think.
Yeah. Were they hot peppers or were they sweet peppers?
They're just regular bell peppers.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of our next goals is like to figure out what to plant in the spring. That always creeps up on us.
And crocuses are so exciting because I feel like that's something that you can fill in a lot of space.
Yeah, that's why I wanted them for that spot. There's a row of irises behind where we're going to be planting. They're green early spring, but they don't bloom till more like midsummer. So it'd be neat to have the crocuses come up in front of them for some flowers, May, June, or whatever, and then later have the irises.
What else do you want to know?
I guess just like common varieties for that kind of like edible garden. Because I think part of that is like the aesthetically pleasing. We're not growing row crops and things, you know what I mean? So there is that kind of like, can you stick it anywhere? Like you want to, can you have the crocuses next to the blueberry bushes and stick a pepper over, what kind of crops do that well that are typically used for that kind of stuff?
I think sweet potato might be a good thing for you guys too. Like they just came out, well, I don't know who they is, but I just saw some stuff about a line of ornamental sweet potato where the roots are also delicious. Like I know my mother uses sweet potato like in her container gardens, and it's like this beautiful lime green foliage. And you dig it up and you can bake it and you can eat it. There's nothing wrong with it. But like culinarily, it's kind of like not the best. There's a new line of sweet potato that has beautiful foliage and the roots are really good. So that might be fun.
Is it similar to growing a regular potato? Like it's a root vegetable and wait for it to flower and die and then dig them up kind of thing?
I think they last a little bit longer. They're not even closely related to potato. Actually, it's not a tuber in the same way potato is. It's like an enlarged root. It's like a fat root. That's why like you do have to kind of breed specifically for like roots that fatten up really nice. I don't think that you wait for the vines to die down. I think you just wait until you're done with the vine. So like I know like people who use them ornamentally, like taking their plants inside in the wintertime or whatever, and just like they're done with that and they dig them up and they eat the roots.
Yeah, that's interesting.
All right, so I did look this up. Louisiana State University and Fitzgerald Nurseries put out a line of 5 ornamental sweet potato varieties that are now marketed as the Treasure Island series. They are actually named after Polynesian islands in all sorts of fun colors and leaf shapes. For example, Tahiti has purple flesh roots with purple skin and green leaves. Makatea has chartreuse-colored heart-shaped foliage on top, and the potatoes are the white flesh kind. So that's one of several varieties that are pretty exciting. Of course, there are several commercial lines of sweet potatoes that I think are rather pretty. These binding crops are pretty vigorous and could make a really nice ground cover if you have a lot of space to fill. But it may not be worth it if you're limited on space. These plants require a long growing season, as much as 4 months before you have really nice, fat sweet potatoes. You can harvest young shoots and eat them kind of like spinach, but I don't know if that's a good enough trade-in for all the other veggies you could grow in a space if you are limited on space. We will see what Jason and Mindy decide to do with this space and return to the topic when the weather warms up. I think what they have decided on is much more out of the box and kind of exciting. And they're thinking about filling in gaps with saffron. Saffron is an incredibly aromatic spice. It has potential health benefits. It's famous for its use in Iranian, Indian, Spanish cuisine. It's a requirement for really good paella. During our conversation, we were kind of using crocus and saffron flower interchangeably and talking about bulbs. Last fall, they planted garlic to overwinter. They planted some flower bulbs for the landscape, and they are putting in a bunch of Crocus sativus bulbs, or corms, depending on who you're talking to, because saffron spice is actually the stigma or lady parts of a very specialized kind of crocus flower. I read a 2020 review paper from Scientia Horticultura titled Saffron, the King of Spices, in order to get a little bit more information about the history of this crop. Saffron as a plant has some weird pollen issues, and it's generally self-sterile. It is only reproduced via corms. Now, take a look at the photos Jason shared. They acquired their corms from a couple different suppliers. One supplier called it a bulb, one supplier called it a corm. They look a lot alike, so plenty of people will use these terms interchangeably. From a horticultural point of view, there's lots of differences in the structure of a bulb and a corm. I don't know if it really matters in this circumstance, but they both produce smaller bulblets around the base of the main bulb, or cormels around the base of the parent corm. In the case of corms, that parent corm usually shrivels and dies when it is replaced by a new cormel, while I think a parent bulb usually keeps living alongside its bulblet. I guess this could influence the density of plants over time in this landscape. That's the difference between a bulb and a corm. Saffron grows well in lots of different types of soil, but generally prefers soil with pH ranges from neutral to slightly alkaline, so a little bit higher pH. So it doesn't necessarily pair well with the blueberry plants, but they can be kept in their own zones, no problem. Saffron does best in loose and well-drained soils to prevent the attack of corm rot. They're sitting there in cold soils over the winter. The life cycle of this crop is a little bit different than you might think. Most crocuses we use in the landscape come up in the spring. They're very famous for coming up early in the spring. But saffron crocuses flower in the fall. Newly planted corms will put up spiky, kind of grass-like leaves that are this photosynthetic powerhouse that grow more cormels in subsequent years, those little bulblets, those little baby corm bulbs. This is what makes it an intriguing idea for a ground cover in an edible landscape. But commercially, folks might be digging these up in the spring, dividing and replanting in the summer, harvesting in October or November. These flower stigmas that you are harvesting contain an essential oil that has a really complex mixture of more than 160 volatile compounds that make up that flavor, the aromas that are associated with saffron. The most characteristic component of saffron is safranal. Safranal is usually not present in fresh plants, but develops from precursor compounds during the drying process of those stigmas. So drying is an important step after harvest. So you can see why saffron ended up being the world's most expensive spice. More than 75,000 flowers are needed to produce 1 pound. They must all be picked by hand, and that drying process can be a little tricky at scale. There are lots of counterfeit saffron products out there, low quality saffron products out there, and its history is populated with folks being burnt alive for selling fake saffron. So you know what? Why not grow your own? This is kind of exciting. I think it's actually pretty easy to grow if your season is long enough. And there are plenty of folks out there who are finding innovative ways to produce domestic saffron, even if the season isn't long enough. Check out the North American Center for Saffron Research and Development in Burlington, Vermont for more information about how folks are producing a commercial product in New England. I think it could do well in Jason and Mindy's Zone 7 yard as long as those plants get enough sun through the summer. So we will check in with them and see as the season progresses. Thanks so much for listening. Find photos of what we discussed on our Instagram at Serious Grower. Serious Grower Podcast is a production of New Hampshire community-supported research. If you are interested in becoming a co-host or would like to learn more about our mission to democratize agricultural research, visit our website at nhcsr.org or come on over to our YouTube channel at NHCSR, where we're sharing insights from the agricultural research community and vlogging about our research efforts on the farm. You can support this work by liking and subscribing, and even better, consider joining our Patreon community.